Howdy there, folks. Brad Trammell getting ready for the live stream. Get your questions, your last-minute questions in now. If you're watching the stream, you can put them in the chat, and we'll go ahead and answer them as they come in on the stream. And, yeah, it looks like we're streaming in like 4 different places and a bunch of restreams, and that's great. I'm really glad to see that. So we'll get started in about 9 minutes, 8 minutes, something like that. And we'll see you guys in a few minutes here. All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Trammell. I am the Director of Operations at SparkRack.com or SparkRack Limited, depending on where you are and how you want to address us. Today we're going to be doing a third installment of our question and answer segment that we like to call SparkRack Live. It is our SparkRack Q&A. This is number 3. I think the last one was in January. So it's been about 6 months. We try to do it every 6 months or so. It started back in October of last year, I believe. Let me bring up the actual feed here. So my name is Brad Trammell, again, Director of Operations at SparkRack.com. I'm also a certified network administrator. So I'm like the perfect person to answer any questions that you all might have about starting a website, running a server, the best hosting company to choose, technology in the industry, things like that. I've been doing this for 22 years. There really isn't a problem that I haven't come across or read up on or researched or at least had my hands involved on solving that issue. We're having problems on YouTube, I'm being told. It looks like it's streaming fine here. I guess keep an eye on it. Let me know if it continues to skip or have problems, and we'll adjust our settings from here. But everything looks good. I've got 2 different Facebook feeds on, and those both look good. So it may be an issue with your internet connection if we're streaming in HD. So if you're on like DSL, and someone else in the house is listening to a stream or watching Netflix or things like that, you might not have enough bandwidth and it might appear choppy. Anyway, so a little bit about SparkRack. We formed in 2012 out of a buyout of another company. We focus solely on web hosting and design, and things essentially IT related. We've also been known to dabble in telephone systems. We do Shoutcast and Icecast streaming. We do email and DNS hosting, things like that. Essentially, if it has something to do with the internet, we either do it or we've done it. So anyway, what we're all here for today is the SparkRack question and answer version number 3. So I'm going to switch to the camera that's directly in front of me, and we're going to go ahead and start with the questions. I got about a page and a half, and you guys can submit questions too. Wherever you're watching, I've got all the chats up so I can see everything that you guys are typing. Excuse me. So if you want to submit a question and have me answer it, I can definitely do that. It's usually about 20 seconds before you hit send and it comes to me. So give it time for me to answer your question. And of course, moderators, if I don't see it, please send it to me in a private message and I'll make sure to get it answered. Because I'm looking down, looking at the cameras, things like that. So I may not always see your question, but the moderators will make sure I get it. Anyway, let's switch cameras here. How you doing? All right. So, like I said, we've got about a page and a half of questions here. And some of them are from customers. Some of them are not from customers. Now, I actually just got this piece of paper. So I can't formulate like answers prior to this stream or anything like that. We've been doing that since the beginning, just to show transparency. We don't want, viewers thinking that, I'm sitting here reading the questions, trying to figure out how to answer it. No, these are all on the fly. That's kind of always how we've done it. And it seems to work because it shows our honesty. I mean, it shows our true colors. We really don't have anything to hide from our customers, which is why we kind of put everything out there, so that you can see, what makes SparkRack tick. And, we really don't have anything to hide. A lot of companies do, not necessarily hosting. A lot of companies do have stuff to hide. we don't really have anything to hide. We owe our success to our customers, and we owe it to you to be open and honest about it. All right. Anyway, so one thing that has changed since the last live stream is when it comes to submissions, we no longer put in your location. We put in where it came from, primarily for our customers and for your privacy. We just don't share your location anymore. But we do share the source of where it came from. I personally know if a person is a customer or not, and I'll let you know. We have about 1,800 customers right now. My math's probably way off, in the wrong direction. I think we're probably closer to 2,000. But we have about 18 to 2,000 customers at this moment that we manage: shared hosting, email, DNS, all kinds of stuff. And I've got a computer that's trying to go into sleep mode over here. That should have been adjusted before we went live. Anyway, let's get into the questions. Enough of me babbling. All right, so our first question comes from Eddie Manchester. He hit us up on Twitter. The question is, with the constant changes in information technology, or IT, how does SparkRack keep up with the times? That's a great question. We actually just revamped our network center and added gigabit service to it. And 10 gigabit service. So a lot of our servers are in what's called an array. So you have one master server, one main server, and then you have subsequent servers that are below it that talk to the master, and all the information gets shared and synced and all of that. Each one of those nodes or arrays has a 10 gigabit inlet that's shared between the servers. Now, if the master is functioning, the other servers aren't using any of it because they're synced on a third-party network, an internal network. So 10 gigabit. We have 10 gigabit to all of our shared hosting servers, 1 gigabit to all of our DNS and email servers, and then we have dual redundant inlets from our service provider, as well as a massive pool of direct connections and failovers, things like that. Our website actually just switched to using a nifty little Linux program called HA Proxy. And if you don't know what it is, HA Proxy is essentially, you put it publicly, and then you have the servers below it on the internal network, and it routes the traffic accordingly. We haven't seen any outages, any problems with our server. And what we like to do is we like to try it on our connection first, our website first, before we make it available to the customers. Excuse me. Because if it's reliable enough for our website, it's definitely reliable enough for yours. So Eddie, thank you very much for your question. He is a SparkRack customer, so thank you very much. I'm going to take a drink here real quick. It's a little toasty in this room. So Carol Werner asks, and she also is a customer, how much data does SparkRack transmit on a daily basis? I have absolutely no idea. The last time I checked, I believe we were somewhere around 2 to 3 petabytes of data a day. So that's 1,000 or 2,000 terabytes a day. On some days it's more. It really depends on how many visitors the websites have, how many, what you're uploading via FTP. I mean, it can range wildly from day to day, hour to hour, even minute to minute. But the last time we ran a statistic on it, I think we were somewhere around 1 to 2 petabytes. And that was probably about a year ago, so that's probably way off. So Carolyn, thank you very much for your question. Karen McCord emailed us and asked, What other services does SparkRack offer other than web hosting? I think I covered that pretty well, but I will go over it again. We do email hosting. So if you don't want the website hosting, you just want reliable email, we do that. We do DNS, so where your domain name points to. We do managed and unmanaged DNS hosting. Icecast, Shoutcast, internet radio. We do web design, web hosting, shared services, dedicated servers, VPS, and we actually just opened up reseller hosting to a beta set of customers that are allowed to resell our services. So, Karen, thank you very much for that question. I'm actually going to start marking these off like I usually do, because I'm going to lose my place. I'm very bad at that. Victor, and again, if I butcher your name, I am deeply sorry. I'm very bad with names. I will try my best to make sure that I don't butcher it. I make no promises, though. Victor Melanda on Facebook Messenger sent us, how often do you scan for viruses, malware, and malware on your servers? Constantly on our servers. If it is a server that is managed by SparkRack, the only thing that's not managed by SparkRack is a unmanaged dedicated or unmanaged VPS. Everything else, we install our malware scanning software on our scripts that that check through everything, do all the rootkit hunts and all that stuff. Excuse me. So those are usually, I believe, rootkits are about every hour. I believe the virus scan is every 30 minutes or so. Or no, I'm sorry, I'm incorrect. The virus scan is every hour. The rootkit is every 2 hours. And then we also monitor on all servers, monitor FTP traffic, and if it is, it'll tally the IP address that you normally connect from, and it'll remember that. If it sees that someone is connecting consistently from another IP address that doesn't show where your account is registered, it does flag it, but it won't ban it unless it sees it doing something malicious, like deleting a file that you commonly edit, something like that. So we're constantly checking our servers, We're constantly doing virus scans, malware scans. Security and reliability is extremely important here at SparkRack. And I'm tripping over my words. I don't know why I'm doing that. So Victor, thank you so much for your question. And of course, you can ask your questions. Like I said, I've got the chat up. I can see YouTube. A few people are chatting away. Our Facebook page looks good. Twitter looks good. I think we're even doing this on Instagram. Not 100% sure, but... all right, so Elisa Kavanaugh from Facebook Messenger sent us, I'm sure this has been asked before, but what do you recommend, Windows or Mac? It has been asked before, but I don't mind answering it because it's a good question. I actually don't prefer either of them. I don't like Windows primarily because of the telemetry features that they have. If you don't know what telemetry is, it is your user tracking and information collection, things like that. I don't like them for that. They're a necessary evil, unfortunately, in the design and hosting industry. A lot of tools only work on Windows and some only work on Mac. But I don't prefer either of them. I am a Linux person. Even this stream is on a Linux computer. The computers all around me are all Linux computers, with the exception of one that is sitting right to my right here. That is my primary internet browsing computer that runs Windows, primarily because I need to be able to use what I need to browse, because it allows me to inspect our website, customers' websites. If someone sends an email, they're like, hey, look at this. I have all my tools on this computer that I can't actually get on Linux quite easily. They were made for Windows. They kind of work the best on Windows. So if you're a novice to computing, I would say stick with Windows. There's a lot of great tools out there. I don't recommend Mac, and there's a reason I don't recommend Mac. Primarily, it's the cost. You're essentially using a Linux computer. So, Linux is free. That's one of the reasons I like it. Outside of business, I'm cheap. I like to save a buck. If it wasn't annoying and I had the time, I'd probably coupon. I'm one of those type of people. But I don't recommend, if you want to get into like a Linux Unix type of thing, download Ubuntu, which is free, and you can get really, really easily. And you can actually run Ubuntu and Windows on the same computer doing what's called a dual boot. Anyway, I got off topic. Sorry. To answer your question, Linux. I don't prefer Windows or Mac. I like Linux. It's just my bread and butter. I find it's the easiest way to do things, to be honest. That's really it. So Elisa Kavanaugh, thank you very much for your questions. I'm getting text messages with questions. Why would you text me that question? Why don't you just ask it in the chat? This is not a customer. This is one of our staff members. I don't know why you would text me the question. Just write it in the chat. Plus, you work here. You know the answer to that question. Don't do that. Don't send me questions if you work here. Don't do that. Alice Ewald. Ewald? I'm going to say Ewald, but I'm probably wrong on that. She is a customer and sent this in via email. Alice wants to know who has access to my data that SparkRack hosts. So the only people that actually have direct access are our server administrators. So that would be myself, our vice president of operations, Mike Venezia, and our network security administrator, Eric Zerbel. They don't access the servers unless instructed to by me, and I won't access a server unless a customer instructs us to access their data. We don't look at any customer's data unless it is flagged by our automated system for one of the abuse categories that we have set. So like torrents or adult content that's not really adult content. You get what I'm saying? Or something that spreads viruses or anything like that. Generally, we don't look at anyone's data unless you as a customer contact us and say, hey, can you look at my data? Then and only then will we look at your data. And even then, a lot of times we put up a fight because I don't like looking at people's data. Our customer care center does not have access to your data. They do not even to see. The only thing they can see is your billing account. That's it. They can't do anything else. Everything else has to be done either by myself, by Michael, or by Eric. Usually it's done by me, or the automated system does it for you when you request it through the customer service portal. So, Alice, only 3 people out of the 15 or so that are part of SparkRack have access to your data. And generally, it's just one of the 3 that are accessing your data. That question actually came up, I believe, a couple of days ago when I was speaking with her. And she asked to put it in here because it's a good question. It's a good question. It's a question that's not asked enough to a web host. And we have no problem answering it. So, Alice, thank you very much for your question. Again, if you have questions, put them in the comments or put them in the chat on YouTube or on Facebook. I'll make sure to answer them. I want to try to get as much of the pre-submitted ones done. I want to try to get some ones that you guys submit answered as well. It's I want to make sure that I'm kind of doing both here. So there are next questions from Mila Jarrett from Facebook Messenger. Mila is not a SparkRack customer. Her question: what happened between SparkRack and cPanel that prompted you to move away from supporting the product? I knew this question was going to come up because I had just released our official, we're moving away from this, between this stream and the previous one. So I knew this question was going to come up at some point. So I really don't want to get too far into it because there's a lot that goes into it. Essentially, cPanel, great company, good people, decent product. Unfortunately, we were, from the very beginning, we had cPanel servers, and they refused to support them after a while. With all of the additions that they were making to the software, all the things they were adding, the things they were removing, we kind of didn't agree with a lot of the stuff that they were removing. For example, Squirrel Mail, which is a great, small, lightweight webmail client, they completely removed. There's a lot of things that they did that we did not particularly agree with as a company. And there were a lot of things that were left to be desired, mostly in the support realm. If there was an issue that we as a hosting provider could not solve, and we had to reach out to cPanel to get the issue resolved quickly, it was never quick, ever. And the issue was never actually solved. They would just send information that was irrelevant to the situation. So we opted to go open source. Open source is it's free for us, which cuts the cost for you. It is something that we can, what's the word I want to use here? It's something that we can add to or build our own modules to bring more catered services to our customers. For example, bringing back Squirrel Mail, which is what we did with our Centora and ISP config farms. And it's also available on our development platform, Cloxo MR. And it's available on CentOS Web Panel, which will be, I believe, July 1st is when that's going live. So that's a little bit about what happened with cPanel and SparkRack. I mean, like I said, there's a lot that goes into it. I really don't want to discuss it. I don't want to bash cPanel or bash another company, because they're a good company. They're good people. We just, on a business plane, we disagreed, and that's unfortunate. That's how business works, though. So Mila, thank you very much for your questions. She sent that on Facebook Messenger. Question did just come in. I will get to your question. Just bear with me. I want to try to at least get through the first page here before I start taking fresh questions. So Alana Hood, who is a customer on Facebook Messenger, also asked us, WordPress or Joomla? Don't do Joomla, ever. Joomla is a huge resource hog, mostly on memory, especially if you're using the PHP version. There's two versions. There's an ASP.NET version, which is for like Windows servers, and then there's a PHP version which can run on Linux and on Windows servers that have PHP installed or enabled. I don't ever recommend using Joomla. The more modules you add to Joomla, the more resource hungry it becomes, the more memory and computing power it uses. I do recommend WordPress. I do recommend Drupal. Both of those are two really great frameworks. WordPress is really low on resource demand. Really, the only thing it asks a lot of is your PHP, and as long as you have a good allocation of memory on your server. I know some of this is over your heads and stuff, but I'm going to speak to the technical side a little bit. I would say go with WordPress. Try to avoid Joomla, primarily just because, like I said, Joomla is very resource hungry. If you're hosting it on your own or you're hosting it with a low-end provider and you have like 2 gigabytes of RAM on a dedicated server with a dual-core processor and Joomla installed, you're going to run out of memory very quickly. Very, 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 very quickly. Probably within about an hour. If the website is trafficked regularly. So I would say go with WordPress. If you're going to use WordPress, there's a great plugin that exists out there. It's called Bulletproof Security. This is a free plugin that you can get for any WordPress website. Install it. This piece of software, if you want to call it software, it's a script. This module, this plugin for WordPress protects your website in the event that it gets hacked or that someone is trying to hack it, and it actually blocks them from viewing your website. So it protects your website beyond what the server protects, which is your email, your DNS, your FTP, all of that information. So I recommend getting, it's called BPS, Bulletproof Security, if you're going to use WordPress. So Alana, thank you very much for that question. So the question that just got asked is, what's the difference between the 3 hosting control panels that SparkRack is currently offering? There's actually a lot of difference between the hosting panels. We have Centaura, which is it's a really robust control panel, similar to cPanel. We have ISP Config, which is kind of like a Plesk type of system. It also offers multi-PHP, so we can do, 3 or 4 or 5 or even 6 different versions of PHP installed at once, and you as the customer can choose the version of PHP for each website that you host, or each directory actually that you host. And then Cloxo MR is another web hosting control panel. It was based on Cloxo or LXadmin. My nose is really itchy right now. that was released in like 2009, so about 10 years ago, that was discontinued. Claxo MR came back and fixed a lot of the issues that were prevalent in Claxo. Security issues, compatibility issues, functional issues, and even features, and really added a lot to the platform as a whole. So those are the three that we offer. They are, in a sense, they're the same, but they're not. It really boils down to the features that you want to get your hands on. If you're more of a developer, Claxo MR is definitely your control panel. If you're internet radio or a small business, or if you run a moderately sized website, Centora is your panel of choice, or should be your panel of choice. If you are a reseller, or if you're a reseller, or you have a lot of different websites with a lot of different core functionality, ISP config is more than likely going to be what you're looking for. So thank you very much for that question. I didn't actually catch your name. I'm sorry about that. So Carl Innes on Facebook Messenger. Carl is a customer of ours. He's got an internet radio station. Does SparkRack support IVP or IPv6? See, remember what I said about not being able to speak today? Yeah, that's happening. Does SparkRack support IPv6? How do I know if I'm using it? So, Carl, that's a good question. Only about a handful of our servers at this moment support IPv6. Mostly our Centora servers, one or two of our Claxo servers, and I believe one of our ISP config servers support IPv6. How do I know if I have it? So most internet service providers are not providing sole IPv6 connectivity yet. Generally, what they're doing is they're using an IPv4, or 1.2.3.4 as your primary IP address, and IPv6 as your secondary or your backup, or in some cases as your tertiary or third option. You'll have two IPv4 addresses and one IPv6, or you'll have one IPv4 and one IPv6. No one has made a full transition to IPv6 yet, at least to my knowledge, and that's a subject that I'm constantly looking for more information on, and trying to figure out when everyone else is doing it so that we can make the push, and all that. So, Carl, thank you very much for your question. I don't see any more questions going on here. Let's see. Nope, no more questions, which is fine. Chris Malone, Facebook Messenger. What preventative measures has SparkRack taken to ensure uptime in an outage? We have backup power, so we have natural gas generators, standby generators, ready for any outage through our utility. Every module or every array has a battery bank that is connected to it. It's a dedicated battery bank, and then those battery banks are tied to another battery bank, which is a dedicated battery bank, and those are tied into the generator system. And the same thing goes for our internet. The fiber optic that comes in, or all the internet that comes in, whether it comes in Ethernet, fiber optic, coaxial, essentially those are all redundant as well. We have multiple inputs for the same internet connection, the same service lines. So should one get cut, the other one will pick up and can, they come in different areas of the building so that we can ensure should one of them fail or get cut, the other one is on the other side and is completely untouched or unrelated to that situation. Cooling, we use a natural cooling system here at SparkRack. We use a hot air rises technique. Essentially, we use a hot air guided system. So the hot air rises up, the vent then grabs the air and it forces it out of the building or to other rooms. Generally we'll use it to heat other rooms that we have available. If, say we have 3 server rooms. If server room A is running a little hot, but server room B is running a little cool, we can actually divert the air to the other server room to bring it back to a normal temperature. So, Chris, thank you very much for that question. I appreciate that. I appreciate you reaching out to us here. Constantly looking over to see if anything's going on here. We might actually, I think we might finish early here. We had planned on doing a 2-hour stream. This might be a 1-hour stream, to be completely honest, which is great because that means we can all go home and enjoy the rest of our day. Corey Bradley sent us a message on Twitter. Who does SparkRack hire? What is the process to work there? We don't hire per se. SparkRack was formed by 2 people, myself and our VP of operations. And essentially there's a lot that goes in. Candidates that work for SparkRack are heavily vetted before they even touch a system. It goes back to the question about, who has access to my data. Really no one, except for you. And then if we absolutely need to, me. But generally, no one. Do we hire? Yes and no. What's the process to work here? That's kind of a secret. No, it's not. Essentially, if you're looking to work in our customer care center, you have to live in Boulder, Colorado. If you're looking to work for SparkRack as a designer, developer, anything like that, those are contract-based positions. They are not staff members. They don't actually work for SparkRack. They work on a contract basis. Really, the only full-time employees that SparkRack has are customer care employees, myself, our VP of operations, our director of network security, which would be Eric, our public relations liaison, Andrea, I can't think of anyone right now. I'm drawing a blank with everyone. My wife does some work here as well. That's pretty much it. I mean, it's a very tight-knit group, and we're very goal-focused and oriented on what we do here at SparkRack. We do allow for internships, but again, like I said, those are heavily vetted prior to them even having access to billing information or live chat or anything really. They're heavily vetted, and that's to ensure reliability, security of our customers, and to ensure that no one messes anything up they shouldn't have been touching in the first place. I'm a neat freak and I'm a perfectionist, so If something gets broken, I'd prefer it be broken by me, so I know how to fix it, than someone else break it and then I have to fix it anyway. Corey Bradley, thank you very much for that question. Doris Eldon, there's no A, so I'm going to assume it's Eldon. Does SparkRack offer web design services, or is it contracted through another provider? We aren't contracted through a provider. All of the designers work for SparkRack, but everything they do is branded as SparkRack. They don't represent any company other than SparkRack. They are SparkRack dedicated developers and designers, but they are contracted. So they're technically not employees. So they're not paid by the hour or paid by salary. They're paid by the job, which it's commonplace in IT or in the design field for a designer or developer to be paid per hour or not paid per hour, but paid per job. So yes and no. We do offer the services. It's not contracted through another provider. Our developers and designers are contracted to work solely for SparkRack, so they only serve SparkRack customers. So Doris, thank you very much for that question. Daryl Smith on Facebook, who is a customer. Excuse me 1 second. That itch. Do you have a mobile app for customers to use? We actually were developing one about a year or so ago. And then right around the time that we were starting to develop it, we started working on a brand new website. And with that website, essentially, rather than putting all of that work into reinventing the wheel, we designed a website that will work on a computer, it'll work on a tablet, and it'll work on a smartphone. So we don't have a mobile app. Anything that you do need to do, though, including your customer service portal or any of that, can all be done through your cell phone or through a tablet. So we don't have a mobile app, but we do have a mobile website that allows you to do everything you need to do. So Daryl, thank you very much for your question. Greatly appreciated. How many people work at SparkRack? Isn't web hosting entirely automated? No, it is not. Not all of web hosting, or IT is automated. A lot of it can be automated. Should that automation be trusted? Not really. Is it in a lot of cases? Mostly. Not by SparkRack. We like to actually, not automate a lot of our core functions. When maintenance is done, it's done usually by me. When we update the servers, when we install a new version of PHP or update PHP, that's usually done by me directly. And it's heavily tested before it actually goes out in a live or production environment. So we're nearing the end, actually, of the list of questions I have. We got 7 questions left. I'm thinking we'll probably end this right around 3 o'clock Eastern, if no one's submitting questions. I see the one question from the live stream. We may take a break, possibly. If we finish, we might take a break and then come back, see if we got any more questions. Philip Tracy asks, how secure is the SparkRec network? Is data encrypted? Yes. You can't run a successful and secure network without data encryption. All data is encrypted. It's encrypted either via SSL or it's encrypted through FTP, through TLS, or there's a lot of different encryptions that we have available. Even a lot of the PHP scripts that we'll develop for customers are heavily encrypted. Prime example is recently SparkRec created a website for a local karaoke venue by the name of Singers. So we built a brand new state-of-the-art website for them that allows users to use the mobile app or use the website and synchronize their experience. They can build lists, they can interact with each other, they can create friends lists. It allows the owner to manage the website better. She went from a WordPress website, which worked fantastically, but it didn't have the functions she as a business owner wanted to have, to having a custom-built platform that encrypts everything, all traffic, whether it be going here or to a computer or whatever. It's all encrypted multiple times and then decrypted multiple times when it gets to its destination. And it's an irreversible decryption. It just uses what's called SALT, or a special key on it. And if the two match, it knows that it authorized properly. So yes, to answer your question, yes, 100%, all data is encrypted. Our network is extremely secure. In 22 years of doing this, I've never managed a network that's been hacked. If that's any indication on how I set up networking, every network that I have ever set up over the last 22 years has never had a data or a security breach. And that's something, that's something you put on your resume, which is actually on my resume, believe it or not. So Philip Tracy, thank you very much for that question. This pen's starting to die. Fantastic. Ernie Shane emailed or sent us a message on Twitter. Sorry. Ernie Sheen sent us a message on Twitter, and it says, recently it was announced that PHP 5 is end of life. Does that mean I shouldn't use it anymore? Yes and no. For the most part, yes. But if you're using a script that only supports PHP 5 or 5.6, you want to make sure that your server is heavily secured. So SSH or command line, if it's a Linux system, is heavily secured using either a hardware firewall or a software firewall. I would recommend changing your SSH port, which is, common practice, should be done anyway. Personally, I don't think PHP 7 is stable enough as of yet. There's a lot of important modules that don't work with it yet. Suhosten is one of them. Suhosten is it's a security module for PHP. PHP IDS doesn't work with it yet. They only support PHP 5.636, I think is the most recent version of that. or 40. They don't support PHP 7, and it's because no real documentation has been released for PHP 7 yet, because it's still relatively new. I do know that they did just announce, probably I think it was last month or the month prior, that they're working on PHP 8. Hasn't been released. There is no beta. There's no alpha. There's no meta phase. There's nothing right now. It's literally just in development. I don't recommend that either, and I wouldn't recommend it. Give it like 6 months or a year, or even in some cases 2 years. If you look at like PHP 3 and PHP 4, I wouldn't use PHP 7 or PHP 8 when it's released in a production environment immediately. Take your time. Don't jump into it just because it's the newest, latest, and greatest, and blah, 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 and whatnot. That's how security breaches and hacks happen. You're using something that hasn't properly been vetted. It has not been, all the exploits, the holes, all the problems with it haven't been brought to light yet. They haven't been made available to the general public. So, Ernie, thank you very much for that question. And if anyone has a question about PHP, reach out to me. Let me know. I will answer those questions. My email address is right here. Send me an email. That is my direct email address right there. Send me an email to that email address, and I'll go ahead and answer your question. I will send you a response relatively quickly, actually. Usually within 20 minutes, I believe, is like my ETA. Or ETR, I guess, if you want estimated time of reply. Chandler Small from Facebook asks us, and he is a customer, what type of information does SparkRack collect and share, and who do they share it with? SparkRack collects a very minimal amount of information for our customers, primarily, and actually I can bring up, if it would let me, I can bring up I'm not going to show it, but I can bring up a customer. Actually, I'll bring up my account because I'm not only the owner and director, I'm also a customer. So primarily we've got first, last name, company name, email address, street address in case we ever need to mail you anything. And we don't retain any payment information. That's done through PayPal. We do not collect and store payment information. PayPal. And I advise anyone do that too. Don't store your customers' payment information. If a hacker, if a hacker wants that information and you have it stored, you're a target. If you don't have it stored and you make it plainly aware to the general mass of people that you don't retain that information, you are not a target for the general hacker. The only people you have to worry about is the novice or experienced hacker that's got a chip on their shoulder that just wants to try to take you down. That's really all you have to worry about. And again, like I said, as long as your server and your website have those security features, you should be fine. So primarily, first and last name, company name, email address, phone number, address, if we need to mail you anything, and then essentially just the status of your account, whether it's active, inactive, things like that, and then information about your actual products. So that's the information we store. We don't share that information with anyone. We don't sell it. We don't transmit it. We don't provide it to anyone, except the only time that we would ever share your information is with another Beyond Nerd, which is the parent company of SparkRack, another Beyond Nerd company, and only at your request. It's not something where it would be like, you know, for example, you reach out to us and you ask us a question, and we're like, oh yeah, we have a company that does that. Here's their information. We don't then send them your information. If you reach out to that sister organization that, again, all sister organizations are either controlled by myself, Mike, who is our VP of operations at SparkRack, or by Eric, who is the director of network security here at SparkRack. Those companies are all controlled by the same three people. So no information is shared among the companies unless you sign a piece of paper or give us written permission to transmit your information to a shared services provider. So that answers your question for that. So Chandler, thank you very much for your question. Greatly appreciated. And I know I'm doing a lot of pointing and talking with my hands and stuff. That's kind of just what I do. I'm sorry. It is getting really toasty in this room. I'm not going to lie at all. Because literally every piece of electronic equipment is on right now. I think you can probably see, you can see the sweat on my forehead. It's that hot in here. And I'm wearing a polo with shorts. Anyway, Kathleen Proctor has a two-part question. Why is SparkRack closed on holidays, and why are you closed on Sundays? So, Kathleen, that's a great question. No one ever asks us why. They just assume, they just assume the answer. SparkRack is closed on holidays because it's a family company. I've known Michael for 20 years. I've known Eric for about 10 years. I've known Andrea for about 8 years. We're a very close-knit group of people. We're essentially a family. And outside of SparkRack, we all have our own families. I've got my son Caleb, who was born last year. I've got Michael's got his children, his wife. He's got a day job outside of SparkRack. Same thing with Eric. Eric's got his child. Andrea has a life outside of SparkRack. I believe she's engaged. So congratulations to our press relation or public relations liaison. We're closed on Sunday for the same reason. SparkRack's all about family. We want to make sure that our customers have, not customers, that our staff has time with their family. We want to make sure that we're not working them to death. They get to spend time with their families, their loved ones, and also do the things that they like to do here at SparkRack. This is not, it's not a 9-to-5 Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday job. It's when you're needed, you step up and do your duty. It's primarily I do day-to-day operations. Mike will get involved if I take vacations or anything like that, which are rare. And if for some reason myself and Mike are unable to perform the job duty of director, Eric will step in and become interim. So there's a chain of command there for SparkRack. Closed on holidays. We're really only closed on a few holidays. Let me see. I'm sure I'm sure I'm not going to be able to find it, but we're only closed on a few holidays. And I'm doing this one-handed, so forgive me. Legal Center. And you can get this information too. If you go to our website at sparkrack.com and go to the Legal Center, about halfway down that page, there is there's a link that says holiday support hours. So the only days that we're really closed, or the days that we're closed every year, I should say, are New Year's, January 16th, which is Founders Day, April 14th, which is Administration Day, Easter, Memorial Day, Independence Day, September 11th, which is Patriot Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas Eve Day and New Year's Eve. That's it. So that's like 9 days out of the year that we're closed. We really don't close any other day. We have talked about possibly keeping hours on Sundays, but the only thing that's not available during that time is our sales department. Everything else is open. Customer relations is open. You have our support center and our customer care center are both open. Those are open. They're open 24/7, 365. The only difference with holidays is that they keep holiday hours. So that takes the general SLA from about 1 hour to about 8 hours. So that's like the initial response. If you were to open a support ticket with SparkRack, and we'll say it's Christmas Eve, well, SparkRack is closed. Most of us are home with our families. There might be one or two skeletons that are working for us and ensuring that operations stay smooth and all that. It depending on the volume, it can take up to 8 hours, but it won't take 8 hours. Usually our response time on holidays is roughly the same as it is every other day of the year. So SparkRack, Kathleen, sorry, I ran on that question. Thank you, Kathleen. Eli Armstrong asked us on Twitter, does SparkRack, like other hosts, overload their web servers? No, we do not. Our web servers can handle roughly about 500 customers per server. We will generally do about 350 per server, and that's to ensure that, if you have 4 websites on your server, all 4 of those websites can use the same resources as, this customer's 4 websites that are set up identically to yours. We don't overload our servers. If anything, we underload them. We keep them well below capacity. So that way the resources for your website are there should you need them in times of higher traffic. So Eli, I've been scratching my nose this entire live stream. I don't know what's going on with that. I need to get like sandpaper and just... Anyway, completely off topic. Where is SparkRack located? This is Lacey Irwin, sent to us on Facebook Messenger. Where is SparkRack located? We are in a suburb north of Syracuse in New York. We're about 15 to 20 minutes outside of downtown Syracuse, in a small town called Cicero. That's where our global headquarters are located. I wouldn't say a small town. It's a town of Cicero. And the locations of where our servers are pretty closely guarded secret. We don't really, and it's not because we're doing anything illegal. No, we don't want people messing with our equipment, so we keep that information private. The company is located here in Cicero. We do have a satellite office on the other side of Cicero. We also have one in Constantia. We have one in North Syracuse. And we have one in Japan, South Carolina, and California. So we have satellite offices all over the place. Primarily, everything is done out of this office, though. And a lot of our, with the exception of the customer care team, a lot of our staff works from home because it's a telecommute job. So I work from home. Mike works from home for SparkRack. Eric works from home for SparkRack. Andrea does as well. And then you've got, Lori also works. Brandon also works from home. They all work from home. So Lacey, thank you for that question. And then we are down to the last question of this sheet here. If you have questions, get them in now because I'm more than likely going to be ending this stream early, primarily because we're about an hour ahead of schedule. We didn't get nearly as many questions as we got last time, which is why we budgeted for 2 hours instead of 1 hour. But we're way ahead of schedule, so let's get that question situated. Jackie Scott, who is a customer, thank you, Jackie, asked, my website is so much faster on its new server. What changed to make it so fast? Jackie, I believe you were on Centora 4, if memory serves me correctly, which is a 10 gigabit server. Or no, it is a 10 gigabit server. It's a 10 gigabit server. So you have a 10 gigabit inlet, and it's got 128 gigabytes of RAM, dual 10 gigabit Ethernet ports, and it's got an octa-core processor. Two octa-core processors. So it's got 16 cores, and it's got a lot of RAM. It's got about 8 terabytes of hard drive space. So there's a lot that's going on that ensures that it works and runs smoothly. So I had another customer actually ask me that recently. He owns an internet radio station, goes by the name of Bruce. Asked me the same question. He came over from one of our legacy Centora servers. I believe it's Centora 1, actually. I'm fairly certain it's Centora 1. Came over from Centora 1, got moved to Centora 4, and was blown away by the speed of his website. He went from a 10100 connection, which was a fiber gigabit inlet, to a 10100 switch that then switched it out to, various different points so that the gigabit was shared. Now we have shared gigabit through the 10 gigabit. So each server is roughly getting about a gigabit up and down. So that's the reason your website is a lot faster. I'm hearing every day from customers on the new Centora farm, Centora 4, 5, 6, and 7, that they are 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, that they are very, very fast. They're reliable. They're resilient. They're dependable, and everything just works. The only issue that we have run into with, and I think it's only on Centora 4, the only issue that we've run into is there's a piece of software that we use to regulate controlled access to accounts. So essentially the amount of data flow that's going to a particular account at any given time, and it, lock it down, is called failed to ban. And essentially, if someone is brute forcing an account like an FTP or an email address or something like that, it will ban that IP address for X amount of time. It seems to be doing that for FTP for some reason, and it's only affecting like 2 customers. And the 2 customers that it is affecting don't use their FTP. Their FTP or their website is actually managed by SparkRack. So it's not something that's actually affecting them. It affects us when we edit their website, but we can also edit it locally as well, directly on the server. We don't actually have to use FTP. It was just something that we discovered while using their account. All right, so that is it for the questions. I'm going to give another minute or so here to see if anyone else has any questions. It looks like we had a lot of people join and then leave. We had, yeah, looks like we did pretty good. I think we did pretty good. We got a total of what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. That's not bad. 22 questions for an administrator with 22 years of experience. So I want to thank you guys for joining me here on the live stream. I don't see any other questions coming in here. It looks like we're good. This live broadcast will be put on our website. It'll be put in our blog center under a new section that'll be created called live video. The YouTube version will be put on there. The Facebook version will just be archived on our Facebook page. We may download it and we may restream it at another time. We don't know. But you have all of that there. If you have any questions at all, or if you didn't make it to the stream, you're watching it later today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, and you've got questions, my contact information is right here. Send me an email, send SparkRack a message on Facebook, put my name in it, it'll get sent directly to me. We also have SparkRack texting. So if you text the 754-4678 telephone number, that number will come directly to your account representative. If you don't have one, it comes to me and I give you an account representative, or I can actually take you on as a customer. So yeah, I personally like to introduce myself to every customer anyway. So if you're thinking about signing up or you're about to hit that place order button, thank you. Your support is the reason we're still doing this. So yeah. Anyway, I want to thank you guys. Anyone that tuned in tonight, anyone that participated, I said tonight, but today, anyone that participated or submitted a question, thank you very much for your time, for your interest in SparkRack. We'll probably end up doing another one of these. I want to say in, what is it now? June 1st. So we'll probably end up doing another one in December, most likely. December or November. So I thank you very much for everyone for tuning in, and you all have a great rest of your day, and thank you for choosing to spend it with SparkRack. Have a great one.